So it's supposed to start. Okay. Okay, guys. So today we have a special guest for you. Long desired, long awaited, the most famous black magician out here, EA KOETTING. So thank you for joining us, EA, tonight. It's a great honor to have you. My magical path actually started kind of by watching your Vocation of Azazel ritual. So I'm kind of having honor to interview one of my big influences, and it was really beautiful to watch your work and to learn from it, and your contribution to humanity as a whole is much bigger than many would like to acknowledge. And so I would like you to introduce yourself in your own words, who you are, what you are about.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that very, very generous introduction. If you're gonna ask me just who I am, what I'm about, I'm just some guy, and I'm about black magic. Like that's how I really see myself. I'm just some guy in the world, and my whole life is about black magic. And but with that, like I started seeing when I was a teenager trying to find information on how to work black magic. There was hardly anything, and even into my 20s, there started to get it to be a little bit more. But more than anything, I saw a massive gap that was there. I actually read a book called The Dark Art or The Black Arts by Richard Cavendish, and it was the worst book on black magic I've ever read in my life. It was 100% from a Catholic perspective, and after reading that book, I went, you know what, I can do better. Like nobody else is writing anything else that could compete with this, but God damn it, somebody's got to. And so I actually sat down and started writing my first, my second book, Works of Darkness. I started writing that as a response to all the bad books that were out there and the lack of books that were out there. And I'd always wanted to be a writer. I'd always had that as a fantasy in the background, but I never really, I thought maybe if a couple hundred people bought my book, that'd be cool. But I started seeing thousands of people would buy my books. They would sell out instantly, and there was something that I had that I was bringing to the table that maybe nobody else was. Something that a lot of people seemed to want. So I wrote about I think 8 books. I'm gonna call it 8 books in my 20s to my 30s, while working like a full-time just job doing cabinetry and raising a daughter and having a life. On the side, was writing about all of my experiences in black magic pretty much from start to finish, and ended that with the Book of Azazel. And so that was an 8-book compendium or 8-book collection of books that really outlined, baneful magic, how to do curses, evocation, voodoo. I felt like I had pretty much had everything there, and I didn't think that I had much more to write about. So I actually made an announcement on my Facebook. I'm done writing. Book of Azazel is my last book. Unless something comes along that completely changes my viewpoint of things, I can't see myself writing another book. I don't know that I have anything else to write about. And right then, Timothy contacted me, who's become my partner at Become a Living God. He's a website genius, internet genius, just all around genius. He contacted me and said, hey, I know you're kind of done with this writing thing, but would you be interested in doing video? I was like, video of what? Nobody wants to see videos of rituals or what. Like, what are you talking about? Because this kind of thing just did not exist at that point. This was 2012. Or this is 2011 that we were having these conversations. And he's like, no, really, videos of you doing ritual, videos of you talking about how to do scrying, how to do different divinations, how to talk to spirits. And I kind of just took the plunge. I'd already pretty much said that I was done. I was content with like just working, doing my daily life, doing my job, raising my daughter, and just being a normal guy and not really being a person in the public eye. And then this opportunity came. Let's start doing video. And I figured, what if I got to lose? Like, at the very worst, everybody could hate me, but I'm never planning on writing a book again. So it really doesn't matter if everybody hates me for doing this. It doesn't matter if I look stupid. It really doesn't matter. I've got a perfect good job doing cabinetry. And at that point, I mean, I wasn't like, if I for every book that I would put out, I would make maybe a couple $1,000, you know, which really that was not that much. That was usually enough to pay off the debts at the end of the year and even things out. That really was not that much money. I was getting more on my tax returns than I was from my books every year. So so that was money was not at all even a thought for me. It was more of an interest of like, let's see. Nobody's ever done this before. Nobody's ever actually talked this openly about it. I had gotten on video on radio programs like Coast to Coast AM, different radio programs around the world that I was able to bring this message out to the world, and that felt really good. I got like a good emotional reward from that of like, the thing that I'm most passionate about, I can speak openly to the world about, and there are people out there that are hearing me. And that did such an amazing, that's always done such an amazing validation for me. And just, it does light me up because especially on this path, it's so easy to feel like you're crazy or you're all alone. And just to find out you're not, wow, that just lights me up. And so, so the video was really, I was like, okay, let's do this, and just started doing a full-on assault of video on the internet. And really my goal was just to see this as an experiment for the first 3 years. See what we could do with this monster, and we called it Become a Living God, and just started throwing out videos, video courses. The idea was to take all of my knowledge about magic and upload it to the internet in video course format, in ebooks, whatever we could. And you know, and I feel like I did that, and I had uploaded everything that was current, and I hit a point in 2017. I hope I'm not going too long in my introduction of myself, but in 2017 I hit a massive wall where I didn't know that I had much more to talk about, and for a few years I had stagnated my own spirituality just so I could be able to do my job of teaching it, because I was teaching stuff that was years past. And so I had been sitting there for a few years, really kind of stagnating, not really having much of my own direction, but just digging into the past. And that's when the gatekeepers really popped out to me. That's when Azazel specifically popped back out to me and said, you know, start working with me. And it is just a matter of like his presence comes to me. It's not like the words will come out of the air, start working with me, but it's more his presence. His presence is felt like a gravity, a black gravity in the room. And then I can feel that gravity pulling me to work with him. And so from there, he said, you know, it's time for you to start working with the rest of the gatekeepers. Because years prior, I had done my first operation of the first 4 gatekeepers. So then the other 9 were revealed, and it actually set me on my first like quest that was actually my own spiritual quest that I hadn't had for several years, and it did turn my whole life upside down. My relationships, the place I live, the way I live, the person I am, completely got flipped upside down with each gatekeeper operation. Because there are 9 gatekeepers, each of them being 3 months long, and each of those 3 months being a complete just disaster in my life over and over and over again. So brings me up to the present. Let's see. My biggest thing that I've got, my most recent release, just to throw that out there, is Deification Magic. You can go to bog.co/deification. This is part of a spell book series. So this is kind of my next passion project. So I've got Deification Magic, Wealth Magic, Love Magic, and next upcoming this summer is going to be Protection or Self-Defense Magic. This is one of the yet again another huge gap that I saw in the market, where everybody all over the internet on every website, what are they doing? They're begging for spells, and everybody hates it to the point that there's rules about no spell begging. Fucking just give them the spells. Cool. Here's a bunch of spells. Spell books full of spells, and specifically hand plucked the spells that work best for me. So that's what I'm up to now. But yeah, what you guys got going on?
So Danny, like, what you have going on?
Well, I think people kind of know who the fuck you are, have this funny feeling, but
That's crazy. So one thing I just gotta tell you, that's fucking, I don't know if you don't mind if I swear on your program, but that is fucking crazy to me. Like, it is crazy to me that there's that kind of recognition. That once again, I feel like I'm just the guy in my basement doing my crazy shit. But for that to be the reality of like that is nuts. That is one of the things. We were talking before we went live or started recording or whatever. We were talking about my shutdowns and the multiple incidents I've had with the police coming after me, and then the not just the police but the systems of the world. And I don't know where I was going with that. Don't know where I was going with that.
Well, that's good. You know, I want you to be surprised and off balance.
Sweet.
But yeah, if you're willing to talk about that, we can go into that. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. So one of the first interviews I did before me and Dimitri became partners was I kind of anonymously did an interview about my experiences with MKUltra. If anyone wants to see that, if you search for it, it won't work because it's totally shadow banned. So you'll have to scroll back in the history, back a year and a half, I think, in order to find it. You can't Google Legion of Lilith MKUltra. It won't take you anywhere. But yeah, so I talked about some of my experiences, and one of the really craziest things that happened with that, there was a little bit of an intersection with you. So I was helping, well, not just helping. I had two people that wandered into my lives who were in MKUltra, and they were both trainees of the famous beatnik author William Burroughs.
Mm.
One of the people was stalking me and actually broke into my house and tried to kill me. The other one actually was a pretty nice person, and they were just extremely disabled, physically disabled from the abuse and the torture and everything that had been done to him. What was interesting was that I came to know them separately, but I found out that they both had been trainees of William Burroughs. And then I also found out that the one of the ones that I met, the guy that came and stalked me and broke into my house and tried to kill me, had done that to the other person as well that was in MKUltra, the nice one. So I befriended the nice one, and one day I had a spirit come to me. The spirit was kind of a melancholy, sort of poetic, sort of depressed, really dense spirit. It really kind of reminded me of myself in a lot of ways. And that spirit kept trying to impress on me that my friend, that he was comparing my friend to Abraham Lincoln, and he was really emphatic about it. I had no idea what this meant. I called up my friend and I said, there's a spirit here that is trying to compare you to Abraham Lincoln, and he won't leave me alone. And by the way, you said that your grandfather, aka William Burroughs, always read you his favorite poem. I'm just curious, what was the poem? And he's like, well, my grandfather always read me this poem, and he was trying to compare me to Abraham Lincoln. And I told you that story in 2014 when I was in Utah. And that's as far as I had gotten, was just that, basically that the spirit was reminding my friend about this poem about Abraham Lincoln, and you stopped me and you said, "Oh, Captain, my captain."
Yes.
And I said, "That's fucking it."
Yeah. So, and it's not just. I mean, it's just, if you don't mind me just rapping on some of my thoughts about this already.
Yeah.
Is that's not just a spirit reminding him of a pretty poem. That's not a pretty poem. "Oh, Captain, my captain" is a trigger word. This is a trigger phrase. This is used to pull somebody into a state. Now, the crazy thing is, how do I know that? Do I know that because I'm psychic and I pulled that from your mind, or do I know that for some other reason? I actually don't know. This might be part of our conversation, because like I've looked. Look, there are so many mysteries and circumstances and strange things behind my my birth, my multiple families, my adoption, the way that I was raised in what seems, now that I look back, a very intentional, torturous environment, with a lot of phrases like these being told to me as a child. And I don't know exactly what "Oh, Captain, my captain" is supposed to trigger a person to do, but absolutely that is a trigger phrase, and that's that's usually drilled into you at some point during trauma, whether that's either you're being threatened, sexually abused, or in any way abused, that you enter into a fight flight response. That this is when these inputs will be made.
Yeah, and what you told me at the time was that when you hear that phrase, or when you hear that poem being recited, that you disassociate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, and I was like, when I would just be out with a person hanging out, like going to a restaurant or like whatever, there would some old creepy dude would come up and say, "Hey, Captain."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I had that actually. I've had that experience a few times, where just doing different random shit. At Burning Man party, and somebody comes up and they're like, "Hey, are you the captain of this boat?" As we're on like
Oh.
and I'm like, "What the hell?" Yeah, and well, and so here's what I wonder. Here's what I've got a question for you. Then is like, those people doing that, they are those operators that are aware of what they're doing, or are they just responding? They have no idea what they're saying. That they're just responding to their own programming, and then is that what? So I'm going to go a little deeper with this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I know where you're going with this. Yeah, like, are they ants following a chemical trail?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So chemical trails. Well. There's also I've gone through the justice system a few times for sexual assault of myself and other people, and you get completely ignored. Like there's absolutely no justice for sexual offenses, and it really started eating me up. Why are there so many child molesters allowed to be free? Why are they everywhere? Because they want them everywhere. Because the more traumatized you are, the more receptive you are to this programming. But it does have a flip side, where the more traumatized you are, sometimes that opens up a lot of different capabilities that you can use against them for your own liberty.
And I would have to add something here. So I did a really controversial investigation with Moloch on those specific set of issues. And the problem with this investigation of mine was that I received information from the spirit, which seemed to be true and backed out by external sources later on.
And
so
I'm
essentially,
going to let you finish, Dimitri, but I just do want to say be careful, because we'll probably get a lot of views here. So just be careful on how you word things. But yeah, go ahead.
honestly, I don't give a fuck, but let me, because I think this is really important. So the goal of this, how this all started, is like I wanted to take the energy of those rituals, transform them into something else, and then use them for my own benefit to make the world a better place. It's like infestation of those rooms or realms or whatever, and then alchemically taking the energy, processing it, and doing it and making something else with it. And then first thing I was told by Moloch himself was like, "Boy, you need to calm down." And then he explained to me that it's actually a really refined system, and it's technically a mathematical thing. So let's say you live in a big city, and every day you meet around 3,000 people, right? And we know that the trauma is like a virus; it spreads. So they need to have around 1 in 3,000 hollow and traumatized as fuck. And then that one guy will infest everyone else. And so they need to have 0.03% actually raped people in childhood in order to keep the virus going. And there is almost nothing metaphysical here. It doesn't require advanced understanding of the dark arts. The only thing it really requires is pure mathematics. And the point of that is, mathematically speaking, if you use pure logic, the systems we live in cannot stand on their own. The only way for them to stand is if everyone is parallel. And the easiest way to achieve that is this. And if you look at the calendar, the time they started doing those rites is when the public human sacrifice was outlawed. So back in the day, they had like public human sacrifices to trigger the mechanism of the people. But when that got outlawed, they simply used the most effective method which they can pull under the rug. And that's exactly what happened. So this is actually a really organized thing and a really logical thing if you think about it. If you are in power, you want those below you to be obedient and unaware how absurd the system they are living in is.
And that's why they'll never let me be president for that reason. Like, yeah, I don't even think they'll let me be mayor, but because of that, because there is the amount of self-compromisation that you have to do to get into power. Everybody in power was at Epstein's Island. I mean, or some other very similar place, and so in that kind of power. And so that's, I mean, we are seeing. I do believe we're seeing between the years of 2020 to 2025 that we are witnessing the crumbling of the not even the current system, the previous system. It's crumbling down around our ears, and I think we've only got a couple years before the bubble pops, and we've got to pick up all the pieces and put this world back together. But yeah. So, but there is what you're saying with there is a fine balance. This is one of the things that Azazel's pointed out to me, like with everything, is even when I went to him, I'm like, okay, so the idea of every religion, every spiritual path is non-attachment. How do you get there? He's like, it's impossible. You have to be attached. Without attachment, your whole body would drift off into different parts. Every cell in your body would disconnect if it weren't for attachment. You don't even know what you're talking about, son. And so yeah.
Azazel came to me after I was totally obliterated. I mean, it took me years just to be able to, like, I don't know, do anything almost. But I remember after this years long like ordeal, I was like climbing up this hill that I would, to like exercise, and climbing it for this 1000th time, and just thinking, I can't believe how hard my life's actually been. Like, I can't believe I'm still in this much pain. And that was when Azazel came to me, for the first time, was when I was on that hill. And he was like, he said, be the soldier of your own command. And then that just led into everything else, really. That was like, it was just a complete domino effect into all the motherfuckers. But I remember having those kind of same sentiments once to Azazel, and I was like, but really, like why is my life so hard, really? He said, I pay my tolls also. I thought that was really a candid, interesting thing for him to say.
That's and every word that they speak can be broken down and dissected so intensely, because it's a toll. That's just not like I pay my taxes or I pay my dues. A toll is what you're going to pay as you're traveling down the road, and so there's progress or somehow movement that's behind all of this, and I do think it is. When I look back, like, if I had a magic wand I could wave and change the past, I don't know that I would stop myself from being abused as a child. I don't know that I would have. I don't know that I would have stopped a lot of that. What I have done, because this has been like an obsession of mine for several years, was like how to change the horrible past.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I've been able to do is to soul travel back to my past self, to my child self, and give him encouragement. Tell him he's going to be okay. Tell him he's going to make it through. Let him have a look at me and say, you know, you're going to grow up to be a strong, capable man. You don't worry, you know. And that's the biggest way. I don't know if that's changing the past. It makes me feel better. Maybe that's just doing child work in my own inner self. But I do. But at the same time, I do feel like as I do things like that, those wounds heal a lot more. So I think there is actually something happening there.
Yeah, and yeah, I've done work like that too, and I find that that work is in what Hecate has termed like the house of death.
How do you mean? Like
I
those,
mean
those, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
that those people, those things, those unresolved things, those situations, at least when we're grieving them and they're over as far as we can tell, you know, in our dimension or in our current time and state, that those things are in the house of death. It doesn't mean that they can't resuscitate in some form, or, but when you're going through that process, it's a death process.
Yeah.
You know, it belongs to that. It belongs to that rulership, essentially.
Yeah, no, and that is, I think, a helpful way of like understanding it, putting it in the right like compartment inside your own self to go, okay,
Yeah.
this is something I need to grieve and then let go. That's one of the big things in necromancy that that because I've got a whole, let's pull that around. I've got a whole skeleton hanging from the wall there that I'll kneel in front of and lose myself in death meditations, and then he'll start speaking to me, and sometimes, not all the time. Just when he has something really clever to say, he'll say it. But he said the only thing that you really need to know is the only thing that you really have power over and have control over is understanding that you don't have any control at all. Understanding that and specifically the phrase he repeated over and over and over for this was, there is nothing that you can do. There's nothing that you can do. And that is in the realm of death, where it's like, it is gone. Yeah. There's literally nothing you can do.
Yeah, we can, AKA nothing you can do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, for sure. But yeah, no, that's yeah.
Yeah. So
you have,
I want to talk about something with TA, something which is not really mentioned in the modern occult circles. So what is the essence of the Dark Ascension, essentially? What is the point of that?
Okay, so no, great question. Here's my theory on it. Everything is built into this looping cycle that you as a soul, that you descend from source through multiple realms of reality. You come into either one or maybe multiple incarnations, at the end of which, if you've done it all right, you're sucked back up into source. You're returning, and nothing has evolved or changed. Maybe source has grown from the experience, but I think the process of dark ascension, as you say, is in the largest scale for me. It is to break free of that process, to build up such a magnetism of power and capability that you can literally create your own reality, that you can either see. Here's how I see it. Is actually, this is how the gatekeepers have shown in me that they did it. Is they created a bubble inside of reality, a pocket reality that they expand and expand and expand into everything else. And so you're basically creating this pocket reality where anything's possible. Now here's the interesting thing. when shit's gone south in the world, which it has multiple times, and it's getting more and more intense as we go, I started asking around 2017, 2018. I started asking Papa Legba specifically, what do I do about this? I was, should I start calling some spirits to kill, leaders? Should I start? What should we do? Because I can see the direction shit's going. He's like, no. What you need to do is you need to find your sanctuary. And he said that's all that you can do. Find your sanctuary, get to your sanctuary, and then make it your sanctuary. And with this, like I have done this, and because of his advice, like I went and bought a property, built a house on it, and have created a spiritual, magical sanctuary here that is, in my opinion, the beginning of this bubble reality that I'm creating, that I think is going to be able to endure this cycle and go beyond even multiple Earth cycles. So, yeah.
Oh yeah,
So-
I have my bedrock too. Believe it.
yeah. No, and that really, at least for me, that was really important. Yeah, and I don't want to get too crazy into the apocalyptic stuff, but I'm glad I've got a good plot of property in the middle of nowhere, because I think things are looking worse and worse in the more urbanized areas.
Well, yeah, and like I just have to throw this in there. So actually, that same trip when I was in Utah, in 2014, Spirit told me that there was going to be a sickness very similar to tuberculosis, and that there was going to be a lot of deaths and a lot of, they said there was going to be a lot of funerals and a lot of weeping.
Wow. What's crazy is, when you said tuberculosis, that brought the memory back, because I remember you saying that, and I was like,
Yeah.
what are you going on about? Like, come on.
Yeah, you were like, you were like, what the hell are you talking about, girl?
Yeah.
But, the funny thing is that, so my mom's boyfriend is a lung doctor and a scientist, and he has studied tuberculosis extensively. He actually works in vaccine development, and so before the virus got to Seattle, which the first people that died outside of China were in Seattle. I don't know if you know that.
No, I did not.
So it hit here first. And yeah, but
That's interesting, because the narrative is not that. The official narrative is it started in New York and worked its way westward. But
no. I mean, you can look at the news reports. It's not.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not. No. It hit New York harder than Seattle, but it hit Seattle first.
Okay. All right.
But so what? So he wanted to implement using fluorescent lights in public places and businesses to keep them open, because fluorescent lights kill tuberculosis, and that was sort of what he was trying to push. But as it turned out, COVID is spread in an almost identical way to tuberculosis, in that it infects deep inside the lung. It's distinct from the way some other viruses are spread. Like, it's not like surfaces, or it's when you breathe it in and it goes deep inside the lung, and that's where it kind of attaches. Anyway.
But yeah, so when you got that tuberculosis, that's probably the closest thing that we've got to COVID, because COVID hadn't been invented at that point. So
yeah. And then there's a whole other story. I won't get into it, but there's a whole other story about how he was trying to install fluorescent lights in public places, and then someone that was trying to patent fluorescent lights spread a rumor to all the left-wing media outlets that it was a right-wing invention, and even though he's a staunch Democrat, all blah 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 blah. I don't need to go into that, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. The things that actually hit the public. There's a lot that never hits the public for a lot of different reasons. And yeah.
But Dimitri, I'm sorry I went on that little tangent, Dimitri. But I would like you to ask something.
So I don't know. Like I wanted to talk about something, but we changed the subject. So let's talk about something
You,
which lots of
you would ask me,
people.
you would ask me about Dark Ascension, and I didn't, and I responded. I didn't know if you had a further thought about Dark Ascension and the any of that.
So I wanted to like present a point which is not kind of known in the Western occult circles. This is something which was hammered down my throat when I went into Hinduism for a while. Now, technically, there is an app on Google Play. Now, this is the most ridiculous shit ever. There is an app on Google Play called How to Summon Demons. And it was designed by the Hindu guys in 2017, where there are detailed instructions how to connect to asuras and to the ghosts of Hindu tradition and to the demons out there. And so I found the application when it came out, like 2015, 16. But I essentially didn't want it to go into it because it was like, it has to be fake, right? And what happened over the years was the symbol from that app, which was like the yantra of Kalanami, kept appearing to me in dreams, and I would see him in his demonic form meditating. And as coward as I was, I like ignored the dream and ignored everything pretty much. And around 2019 or 18, I started getting into Hinduism. And to keep things really short, what those spirits kind of pointed out is that according to them, Latvian path is using dark energy and the darkest possible acts you can imagine to connect to the source. So you use all of the things we deem heretical to connect to the source. And it is actually the more effective way of connecting to the source. And so I did experiment on that, okay? Let's try to use malignant intent to connect to the source. And there is a way of literally religiously dedicating the life force of others to the dark demigods, which is what asuras are. You dedicate the life force of yourself and others to those dark demigods, and they give you the experience of enlightenment. Essentially, what happens in that moment is they forcefully rise your Kundalini energy up your chakra system, and they force enlightenment, which results in breaking of a cycle. So what is really interesting is I did it about 2 weeks before me and my girlfriend will see each other, or me and Danny will see each other last summer. And after that was over, I was so mentally obliterated that he couldn't like recognize me during that entire summer. Like I was off. My psyche was in tatters. I needed like 5 months to just.
Uh-oh.
Oh, you froze.
Yeah. What happened in 5 months, Dimitri?
Right. Oh man.
Maybe we'll never know.
That's a cliffhanger. That is a cliffhanger. All right. When he comes back, we're gonna find out. Oh, yeah. But you know, let me think back just to like start responding while he's frozen. There is a crazy there's a thing that has in order for you to become the butterfly, you can't just go from what you are to that. Your whole life has to go to mush. Your whole self turns into goop, and then when you reemerge, that's when you actually become the butterfly. And so the pain that you're saying you're going through and all of that's part of it. That the confusion when you like lose a relationship, your life falls apart, and then you've got this like confusion about who am I?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so crazy. I would like to say that I've nipped that one in the bud. I'd like to say that's never going to happen to me again, but we'll see. We'll see how life turns out. But because it is crazy to lose yourself. But yeah, welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah. So like. So what did you think about this, like,
you said
perspective?
3 months ago or 5 months ago?
You said, yeah, you were saying that for 5 months, like you were like a larva or something. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I was really mentally failed shadow of my former self. And the thing is, so the second discovery of that entire process is that Kundalini and chakras are one and the same system. Those are not two separate systems. So once you open a particular center, Kundalini automatically raises to that point. And the way of opening the chakras according to those dark beings is to project hatred onto them. So you literally direct your negative emotion into the center, which forcefully opens the center and rises Kundalini to that point. And this is something they are specifically really fanatical about. And this is something I didn't read anywhere. This is pretty much the opposite of everything taught by any system today. And that's exactly what Hindu guys who designed the app confirms for me. So I would always like talk to those guys after I receive a discovery, and they would say like, yeah, that's exactly how we do it down here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you know, and that's I was given a very similar teaching by Abaddon to whenever it can be just like if I'm feeling anxiety or depression or some negative emotion I don't want to feel, or if I feel like somebody's throwing curses at me or there's a negative spirit or something, anything that's negative. Where do I feel it in my body? That's the first thing I've got to go to. Where do I feel it in my body? And then focus all of my attention on that spot until that is all I'm focused on. And it's actually crazy because what you want to do, your instinct is to jump away and to not pay attention to those things. But if you actually look at it and you just spend a little bit of time, the way that Abaddon says, he says all of your problems will soften. They just soften as you do that. And it's like, oh wow, yeah, they just soften like fucking butter under a knife for sure. So yeah.
Yeah, we've been working with Abaddon for real. Like Abaddon is from the beginning for me, he's just been like, I'm your man, basically.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that, Dimitri? You want to talk about Abaddon a little bit?
So regarding Abaddon, yeah, I have some questions for EA, but I just want to say that like Danny is really good at channeling. So what she kind of gets a lot of the time is she gets accurate shit without doing rituals. So she kind of has her delirious states where she just like receives shit from the entity.
Let me interrupt you just for a second and ask you, Danny. So while you were out here for the boot camp, that was one thing that I saw is like rituals were pretty much useless for you. But like getting out into nature, getting into water, getting out and then stimulating like spontaneously letting the experience come out was what I don't know, the key. Has that kind of been the standard for you going forward?
Yeah, it has.
How do you feel about that?
Well, so I feel like I don't want to exclude myself out of rituals. But for whatever reason, the spirits just kind of like don't give a fuck about that. Like, I don't know. I do work a very stressful, demanding job as a special ed teacher. And so that in a very real way limits what I can do as far as like setting up rituals, like just be matter of fact, like, but I plan on fucking retiring after school gets out in June, like so then I can like do all the rituals and all that shit. Like, what was I gonna say? Yeah, like I don't know. Like I've called Lucifer maybe one time, but he came to me the other day and was really cool and just like, what did he say? Sorry, I'm losing me. What did he say? Oh yeah, he was like, oops. I'm organized. See, you can see what a scatterbrain I am right now.
So I just have like a question for EA.
Yeah.
So this is something I was really interested in, but you never talked in detail about. You kind of sensationalized it. You kind of talked about it, but you never told anyone in a scientific way what it is. Like, can you unveil for us the gatekeeper ritual from the Book of Azazel in detail? What it is about, how to do it, and yeah, I really want to know about that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to be, retelling some of what I've told in my books, but I'll also see if I can add any pertinent details. So I went to this black metal festival out in Colorado Springs, Colorado, out in the middle of like beautiful, beautiful pine trees everywhere. And we actually had to like drive in caravans in like SUVs to get to the spot where they were doing this like 3-day concert event, and it was all black metal. So you set up your tent, you chop some firewood, and you're chilling around the fire with everybody painted up in corpse paint and crazy, metal music going on in the distance all weekend long. It was amazing, amazing. But one of the bands that performed there was named Grauin Pestance out of Florida. Tomas that ran that got to be a bit of a friend of mine, and really, really powerful magician. Well, he did this ritual where he had my friend Dawn up there on the altar as on top of the altar as the human altar, and he performs this ritual, and then he invites her up, and she stands up, and she is very clearly not her anymore, and he walks her down the aisles where we're all just like standing and stuff. He walks her down, and she reaches out and touches some people and says some stuff, walks by me, and doesn't even look at me. She doesn't even know I'm there. Like, and she didn't know too many people there, but she just walks by me, and it was just a clear, like, that is not my friend in there. Like, this is that was probably the most deep possession ever that I've ever, not that I've ever seen, but that I've seen up to that point. I've seen some pretty intense ones since then too. But
I've seen you be possessed pretty deeply too.
yeah, for sure. No, and that was kind of so that actually I see that, and then I go talk to her afterwards. She's in her tent, and she's in her tent. She's covered in sweat, and she's got like blankets on her, and shivering, and just going through her whole like post possession withdrawal. And I was like, whoa, what? And I go talk to her, and again, she recognized. As soon as I come up, she looks at me, and it's her again, and the difference was so clear. And then, it was actually as I was driving home after the event was over. My ex-wife get in the car and pack our shit up and get on the freeway, and I could feel Belial just stewing in me, and Belial was saying, I want to like that, I want that. And I was like, all right, cool. So
is that an exact quote?
Yeah, that is the exact quote from the demonic king Belial. Me, I want that. Yeah, for sure. He made that very clear. So part of the story that I didn't tell in the book, because it's kind of not maybe not very nice. I tell my ex-wife, who was my wife at the time, sitting looking in the seat next to me, and said, Belial wants me to do a possession ritual with him. And I was specifically reminded of the ritual that Victor Newberg and Crowley did in the desert with Corazon, where he got completely possessed and transmuted into multiple different forms. And so I was telling her this, and my wife saw. So who you thinking, that bitch Dawn? Well, yeah. I was thinking like she's able to get possessed really well. I saw that, and yeah. So she's like, "What? You don't think I could get possessed like as good as she does?" I'm like, "Are you fucking serious right now?" Okay, well, I'm like, "Do you really want to do this?" And she's all, "Yeah." So the reason that my ex-wife was actually like the chosen offer is because of her pettiness and whatever with that. So I was like, all right, you really want this? It's coming for you. And I mean, in my opinion, in my opinion, Belial has just taken her to hell. This is one of the things that I think is true for these demons. If you're not working with them, but they're in your life, they can drag you straight to hell. You've got to be consciously working with them if they're in your life. So,
Wow.
yeah. But oh yeah, go ahead.
I will. Actually, I have to pee really bad. But,
okay, go for it. I'm gonna keep ranting.
Okay.
But with the gatekeepers, so that was the start of it. As soon as I started calling Belial to put the pieces together, he was like, not just me, but there needs to be 4 of us. And I was like, okay, you need 4 people to get possessed. And he's like, no, only 1 person needs to get possessed. So this is the cornerstone of it. 1 person has to be completely possessed by one of those gatekeepers in order to anchor that ritual. That person cannot be the same person conducting the ritual, because you got to get so possessed that you're not able to do the ritual anymore. You've got to have in my opinion, you've got to have multiple people. You have to have at least 1 person for each gate or each cardinal direction. And each of those people will have a seal of an archangel, the archangel of that direction, and they smash that or defile it in some way, casting out any angelic presence. Usually, this is just like you can do a wax seal or a clay seal and then break it, or smash it on the ground, whatever. However is best to manifest that for you. And then you've got to have 1 person. For this ritual, it was Belial. I've never tried variations of this with other gatekeepers. It would be fun. It would be fun to. I did kind of a mini one with some friends during my evocation course, but I don't think that was the full thing. But yeah, we'd have to get probably a good 6 or 7 people together I'd say 9. Just make it a good satanic 9 people to make this work well. But do you have specific questions about the mechanics of the gatekeeper operation? Or I think the biggest thing, honestly, is calling all 4 gatekeepers at the same time, having one person, at least 1 person that's fully possessed by one of those gatekeepers. The mechanics of that is that just anchors it into this world. It does give it that that person is basically holding the anchor for the entire ritual to then become completely physically manifest, which it really is. The inside of the circle becomes and this was well before the days of anybody on the internet, because this is even before I was doing the internet much, where people were saying the floor is lava or whatever. That is the experience. The floor turns to lava, and that experience. When I say the floor turns to lava, I think that experience is partly. I mean, a good deal of it is that a gateway has opened up in there, but the turning to lava experience, and then to take it to the furthest level is letting yourself die inside that lava, letting all aspects of yourself and your life and any hopes that you had for your future, anything that you've got in your past, it's all gone. Let yourself go, and that does feel very, very. The way that I thrust myself into it, it feels like a very physical thing. Now, some people say I'm dramatic. I'll take it. I'm dramatic, but part of there is something. I think there's a reason that being dramatic, accentuating everything to the furthest level, allows me access to the whole well of energy that just most people just don't have. And so with that, I was able to transmute that experience. There might be, I think, a couple people that stepped into the circle were just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can feel something. Some of them, because we had 20 people in the first gatekeeper ritual, and so people were drinking. One guy was shooting heroin right before it, and so some people just weren't that impressed. But it really does. I think the real key to it is throwing yourself into it, and also letting yourself actually go through that full ego death. So yeah. And yeah,
So,
you would ask me earlier, like, what's the real story about, like, what happened with my ex-wife and her possession. I mean, it was hard to get Belial out, because that was the idea, that we get her possessed and then we exorcise her and then Belial's not in her anymore. And he just wouldn't leave. And like, yeah, he'd leave, but then he'd come back, and I could tell just her eyes would glaze over, and she'd just look at me as not her, as Belial. And so I'd do another exorcism, and then about a half hour later, he'd be back. And then, you know, it would get pushed off. It'd get pushed off at that point, maybe a couple weeks, but it was usually at least once every couple weeks. Her eyes would just flip. We'd just be driving down the road or shopping in the grocery store, and she'd just boom, she's Belial, and it was really creepy for me. After a while, she's like, "Yeah, you don't really have to try to get him out anymore. It's okay." And then, like, the one and only tattoo she ever has gotten is Belial's sigil, and she's always been against tattoos. So yeah.
There must have been something in her. There must have been some kind of trauma or something, because normal people, first of all, aren't that susceptible to possession. I find that it's usually like a matter of training or a matter of like trauma that makes someone that easily possessed. Or both.
Yeah.
But
you know what I'm even thinking? So I'm thinking, like, in cultures who indigenously, as part of their rituals and their ceremonies, experience possession, most of those peoples are living in a daily traumatized state. Almost 100% of their population is, and so I could see that being that it could open the doors for that kind of experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Belial's been around me. I'm extremely disobedient. I never does what he says. But like, I don't know. For some reason, he seems to be pretty chill with me. I have no idea why. Like, I don't know, man.
In my opinion, this is the secret, beautiful relationship that I think you should have with these beings that takes it to the next level. Stop doing everything they say. Stop treating them like they're gods. Like they come up and actually treat them like they're your friend and you respect them, but at the same time be like, okay, well, I'm gonna do my own thing. Yeah. And you know what? Like, I've done that to Azazel several times. Where I've been like, hey, bro, like, you know, he shows me what's ahead, and I'm like, yeah, like he told me very clearly, shortly before my ex-girlfriend and I got busted for possessing like every drug in the world.
You told me that like 2 days before that shit happened. You told me that Azazel story. Like, it was fresh in mind. Yeah. That's
crazy. Cause that was, he straight up, he's like, yeah, you need to throw everything away, get rid of all your drugs. And I'm like, maybe next month. I was, well, actually, like, what I did, because that was like a 3 a.m. thing. It was bothering me, but there was still that part of me that was saying, oh, that was probably just my imagination. I was probably just making that up. And until handcuffs are on, I'm like, oh shit, Azazel, okay. So that is one thing. But it's even interesting with those situations. They're not telling you what they're telling you about what's coming to make you act a certain way. It's more like they're telling you just so that way when it all happens, when it all flops out and it's like exactly like they said it was going to be, that you recognize the miracle in it or something. They're trying to make us see their magic. I don't know.
No, I fucking know, and Azazel's doing the same shit to me. But I still want to give Dimitri. Dimitri's like literally in the shadows right now. Like, literally. Like,
sorry, come back into the light.
So technically, I just want to say that I kind of have a different opinion than EA here.
Good.
To me, when I have been given warnings, the fucked up shit happened only if I ignored the warnings. Some of those warnings even saved the lives of people I loved, or helped me to swear vengeance on the people I care about. Like, if somebody you love is harmed, you have the ability to be a decent avenger because spirits told you that it will be beforehand. So prepare for so and so to swear vengeance upon your enemies because so and so will happen. So the most drastic example of this was before like last March or something. I saw in a semi-trance a vision of one of the Vedic kind of spirits, Vedic rishis, Shukracharya, and he told me in meditation the only one sentence. Okay. Okay. So he told me the only one sentence, and the sentence was, you need to balance. And the point was I needed to balance like my spiritual and physical endeavors. And I ignored the warning, and that was the only warning I ignored. And then 3 months later, when I rose my Kundalini by force, my psyche broke. And so that was the most dramatic example so far.
Yeah. No. I think you're right. I think my point more was like, specifically with my experience with Azazel. Yeah, he comes to me, tells me, get rid of all your drugs, throw them all away, be done with it. And I was like, and really, what was really behind my reluctance to was the addiction feeling of I can't. I don't know if anybody that's listening has ever been through addiction of any sort. It's a really crazy feeling of panicking of how you're going to face life without the thing that you've been using as your crutch. And so it was really like I can't. And I think that there was a miracle involved in that being taken away from me, so I could have the sobriety I needed because that, I mean, I don't.
Exactly.
I'm smoking joints as we're talking now. I'm not fully sober by any means, but
Yeah.
I think that there is a you have to be very cautious about what drugs you partake in because they can get hold of you, especially the stimulants. From my experience, those took me down a bad rabbit hole. But anyways, Azazel tells me to throw them out. I resist. A couple, not very long later, get busted for like every drug in the world. I'm sitting in a jail cell, and Azazel's presence just comes to me, and very specifically, you can. When you've made friends with these guys, you can feel a very distinct difference between each one. So Azazel's presence comes in, and I'm like, what the hell? And he goes, "Don't worry, I've got this all under control." I'm like, okay, cool. I hope you're gonna handle my bail. Yeah, and I was even like, how am I gonna get bail? My bail was ridiculous. Everything just flopped over. I'm out that night. I go home and go to bed. I wake up the next morning. I look at my email, and I've got an email from a fellow Jose that had been working with spirits and specifically working with Azazel for a couple years, trying to have a breakthrough, trying to get Azazel to speak to him, trying to get Azazel to give him a message of some sort, and nothing was working until that night while I'm in jail, and Azazel comes to me and says, "Don't worry, I've got this under control." He comes to Jose, wakes him up, and says, "Email EA right now and tell him, don't worry, I've got everything under control." And so that was the exact message. And I was like, so it was one of those moments, all the hair standing up on my body, and I'm like, holy fuck, it is nuts. So I guess what I'm saying, Dimitri, is like, well, and then I felt almost like ashamed I didn't listen to Azazel's advice. And so I hit him up and I was like, well, what? I'm sorry, like, are we still good? And he was like, oh no, I didn't tell you the thing I told you to make you do a certain thing. I was just telling you what was coming. I was just letting you know. You don't have to take my advice. You don't have to follow. We don't give commandments. You don't have to do any of that. So yeah.
Motherfuck. No, I have a story. Like, I mean, this is on. I haven't quit smoking, but like Azazel, when he came, was like, you have to quit. He's like, you're gonna get fucking not just lung cancer, but like double lung cancer. And so I like quit smoking for a while to work with him, to be like, to prove myself or whatever. And then life got stressful. I fucking be smoking again. But during the time I was trying to quit, like, I had my last pack. I was like, okay, this is gonna be like my last pack of cigarettes. And all of a sudden it disappeared. I couldn't fucking find it anywhere. I looked everywhere. Like I tore my whole fucking house apart looking for this stupid pack of cigarettes, right? I tore all the sheets, all the blankets off of my bed like 3 or 4 times, put them back. And then I turned around for a second and then I looked back and he put the fucking pack of cigarettes right on the top of the pile of the sheets and the blankets.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm still smoking because I'm fucking stupid.
No, I'll tell you what. So that is something, because like I am conscious of it, and that at some point I'm gonna stop smoking cigarettes. You know, I can go without just about everything else. I don't really drink coffee. I don't drink anymore. I'll smoke a joint from time to time, but you know that's not a compulsion either. The only compulsion I've got left is cigarettes. But you know, a couple years ago I was smoking meth out of a glass pipe. So it's like I'm not gonna judge myself too harshly on smoking cigarettes at this point. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. What else you got, Dimitri? You got other questions you wanted to flesh out at all?
So I don't know, like we are kind of talking for an hour, so I kind of need to go.
Okay.
So we're
Right.
kind of
No,
probably
you know what? You're right. I've got to take off too. But let's do this again, guys. Like I don't
I would
know.
love to
I don't
do
know when,
that.
but yeah,
There's
both
so much more to cover.
Yeah. Now that you got my Skype, and I log into Skype.
Yeah.
Almost every day for work. So hit me up, either of you, and we'll make this happen again shortly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So
Have
talk
a
to
good
you
night.
soon, guys.
Bye.
Bye.